Hello everyone. Today I'm going to take you along on my DIY journey harvesting maple syrup. This is my first ever attempt, and I'll show you how I got started, how it all turned out, and a few things I would do differently on my next go. Here's a rundown of materials I used to get started. A drill equipped with a 5/16 inch drill bit, taped off at 1.5 to 2 inches. That's the recommended hole depth. I've got some taps, or spiles as they're called, a rubber mallet, food grade 5-gallon buckets with lids, and some 5/16 inch tubing. I gave the buckets a scrub down in the shower to sanitize them before drilling holes in the lids the tubing will go into. I did some in the middle and others off to the side to see which setup would work better. Here's the idea. The tubing fits in snugly in the hole, creating a watertight seal. With my first tree staked out, I'm drilling the hole around 4 feet up the trunk and at a slight upward angle. I chose an area on the tree that looks clean and healthy. There's no overhanging branches or dark discoloration, which that can be an indication of a diseased or unhealthy tree. As far as tree diameter, I'm looking for something no less than 10 inches. And again, only drilling about 1.5 to 2 inches deep into the tree. And already sap is coming out of this hole. Going to install these plastic spiles into the hole, the long skinny side first, and tapping in with a mallet until I hear a dull thud and meet some heavy resistance. Which brings me to mistake number 1. I would go with the regular hammer here. I thought that the rubber one would be less likely to crack these plastic spiles, but I found it doesn't have enough driving force to really seat these in well. I went back later and shored all these up with the regular hammer. I then connected the spile to the bucket via the 5/16 inch tubing, creating a sweet pipeline of sap from the tree to my collection bucket. Measured out and cut the tubing so there's a little bit of slack in the line. It would have been a lot easier to connect the tubing to the spile before tapping it into the tree, so lesson learned the hard way there. After a few minutes, I had successfully tapped my first tree. Now it was time to repeat the process on a few other trees on the property. Looking again for healthy trees over 10 inches in diameter and that have good southern exposure so that the sap travels nicely up and down as the sun warms the tree during the day. These are red maple trees, by the way. I think I mentioned that. It might seem obvious, but you can actually tap a variety of trees and make syrup from the sap. Sugar maples are regarded as the best as they have the highest sugar content. I am surrounded by sugar maples in my area, but for some reason there aren't any on my property. So I am tapping red maples, which grow in abundance on my land. They produce about a 70-to-1 gallon ratio of sap, compared to a sugar maple, which is closer to 40-to-1 ratio. In other words, 70 gallons of sap should yield you about 1 gallon of syrup. Alright, so this is the day after I tapped this tree, and let's see how I did. I can see some sap still in the tube, so we're definitely flowing. There is indeed sap in the bucket. It looks like I got a few pints in just one day. I poured it over to my main storage bucket to save up until it's time to boil. Fast forward a few weeks later, I've collected about 5 gallons worth of sap from 4 trees and I'm ready to boil. But first, I need some kind of furnace. I swear there's a fire pit under here, but unfortunately it has to be excavated out of the snow. Which brings me to my second mistake. I would probably hold off a few more weeks until a little later in the spring. I was worried my sap would spoil after sitting in my fridge these past 2 weeks. They say it spoils quick, so treat it like milk. In hindsight, I probably could have waited a little longer in the season to start my taps, or just stored the sap a little longer. But I was eager to get this going, so here I am, trying to scrape out some level ground to start my furnace. Boy, this ground was pretty frozen, and after trying to thaw it out with the fire, I got to work attempting and failing to level out the ground for my first layer of block. The ground was just too frozen to work with even after the fire. This is another reason why I would have waited for the weather to warm up a bit, although this wouldn't be an issue if I had my furnace built already. I'll probably build a permanent one this summer, so subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see that. I messed around with a few different designs and layouts, trying to add in a smokestack to vent this furnace. I'm really just winging it for my first time, not using any specs or references. Smart. 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 I know I want it to fit one pan, which is 12 inches wide, and have that sitting on 2 layers of CMU block. The vent was just chaos. I mean, I couldn't get anything near level ground on the backside where I wanted to build the chimney. So after trying a few different ideas, I just ended up using the CMU blocks. I really wanted to use this 6-inch duct I had on hand, but it was too large to fit in the block holes and needs to be tapered down to about 4 inches. Spoiler alert, stick around to the end of this video to see how I was able to incorporate the vent pipe into my revised furnace. But anyway, this is what I ended up going with on this first version. So here is the furnace all said and done. Ew, right? It's not exactly what I had in mind, but hey, it's good enough for what I need to do, and it gave me a lot of good ideas for how I want to build the actual maple furnace for next year. I ended up using 12 CMU blocks for this, as well as some spare bricks and rocks to plug up the holes. There is a little firebox in the back of the furnace that will hopefully draw the air up and through and right out of this chimney vent here. I am using a 12-inch wide by 21-inch long by 4-inch deep catering pan to boil down the sap. Okay, so time to get down to the actual business at hand. Starting by pouring in my first round of sap, I made sure to pour this in before starting the fire below so that the catering pan didn't warp. And I'm only filling this pan about 2 inches full, 1, to prevent boilovers, and 2, so that we can get this up to a boil quicker. With the fire started and ripping, all that was left to do now was wait. And wait I did, until eventually about 10 or so minutes later, I started to get a boil. From here it was just monitoring the sap level and adding in more when it got low. This is what it looked like after about 30 minutes over the fire. There is lots of evaporation coming off the sap, and the level is dropping as the sugar water concentrates. This part was all trial and error for me, and mistake, or lesson learned, number 3. I think I let the sap get a little too low here, which can burn the sugar. So I would let the sap boil down to about 1 inch, then add more sap back up to the 2-inch level. For every new pour, I use some cheesecloth, albeit not very gracefully, to filter out any large pieces of debris left over from the collection process. I'm pretty sure you can keep any debris like pine needles or bark in there during the boiling process, and just filter it out later. It could add some nice flavor to the end product, if that's what you're into. Adding cold sap to the pan can definitely kill the boil and add even more time to the process. Things like adding an additional warming pan to this setup can help reduce boil times, and I will likely build out my next furnace so it can fit at least 2 pans over the fire. Fast forward a few hours later, this is the last of the sap boiling away, and it's been going strong like this for the last few hours. You can see the sap has a darker brown kind of color now, and I have the fire pumping as hot as I can. It's been about 4 hours since I started, and this is all that is left from the original 5 gallons of sap I started with. It's a nice brown color and has a sweet, syrupy smell coming off the evaporate. So I'm ready to transfer this over to a pot to finish the boil inside on the stove. I lined a strainer with cheesecloth and carefully poured the boiling hot sap into the pot. This pan was piping hot being over the fire for hours, so I used heat-resistant gloves on top of pot holders to handle this thing. Here's a brief look at what it looks like at this point, and all the bits of ash and other junk I filtered out. Now I am inside and ready to finish the process by boiling out the remaining water. The idea is to boil out just enough water to make it syrup, which happens when either the temperature reaches 7 degrees over the boiling point, which at sea level is 219 degrees Fahrenheit, or the syrup measures 66 bricks with a Brix hydrometer. Okay, so mistake number 5 right here, and this is a big one. I am boiling this way too hot right here. I should have brought this up to a boil slowly so that I could monitor the sugar content more closely. A Brix hydrometer is this nifty little invention that basically is able to determine how much sugar content is existent in the liquid you are testing. You basically just need a couple of drops on the viewing shield, then close the flap so the liquid covers the entire surface area. Now look at this through some natural light, and what I am looking for is to see how much the blue area is covering. It should be around 66 bricks, which is the perfect sugar content for syrup. I am coming in at 77 bricks. Dang. Okay, so I definitely overshot this, and that is another mistake on the board. This is reading about 77 bricks, so I'm going to have more of a toffee type product here after this cools. It's still delicious and edible, but isn't exactly what I was looking for. So to reiterate mistake number 5, make sure to bring this up to a boil nice and slowly and constantly monitor the bricks percentage to make sure you don't overdo it. I think the mistake I made was relying too much on the temperature reading over the bricks percentage. I'm about 600 feet above sea level in my area, so I only should have let this boil to about 209 degrees instead of 219 degrees. Overall, the sugar content is the most important determining factor, so I'm going to go with the bricks percentage in the future. This is not syrup at this point, but will be more like a coffee consistency when it cools. Still great stuff, but not what I was looking for. So I'm going to collect some more sap, rebuild my furnace, and try again.
Hey guys, so it's a few weeks later, and as you can see, the snow has melted around here, so I could actually get a level surface in the fire pit and a good solid level foundation to actually build a nice damn, it's loud. I had a nice flat foundation where I could actually build a lot better of a furnace here. So this is the second go of it, and as you can see, the walls are more level. There's a little furnace that is blocked off in the back and then goes up to this 6-inch smokestack here, which I've actually tapered down to a 4-inch and secured it with some self-tappers. So that's what the back looks like. Just played the gaps up in the chimney with some mud to make it a little bit more airtight. And yeah, it might have settled a little bit. The ground is still super swampy, so it's not perfect. Next season I'm gonna build this on a actual concrete pad, so it's solid and level and won't settle. But for the second batch, I think this is gonna work out pretty good, so stick around and see how it turns out.
Apologies for the chicken noises there, folks. As you could see, they were kind of stalking me a little bit. So, hope that didn't ruin the video for you. Alright, so it's a few days later, and I've collected about 15 gallons of fresh sap from those same trees that I tapped at the beginning of the video. They ended up producing a ton of sap, and I only tapped 4 trees. And of course it snowed again, but I already have my furnace built, and that's where I messed up in the beginning. Because this is working great, as you can see. I have my first batch of sap going here, and the process is underway. And I'm going to implement the lessons I learned on my first go around into this one to see if I can get a lot better results. Yeah, so needless to say, this setup worked out pretty well. The vent worked well to keep the heat flowing upward and debris out of the syrup, and I was able to boil down all 15 gallons of sap in about 6 hours, which is a long time, but it was a lot of sap and I was only using this one pan, and the product turned out really great. I made sure to monitor the bricks level closely, and I ended up pulling it off the heat when the thermometer read about 209 degrees. Come to think of it, I probably should have just showed you guys how I did this setup the second time around. But you know what? This is a DIY channel, and my mistakes are mistakes that you don't have to make on your first go around. So the lessons learned were definitely worth it for me. Thanks for watching this video, guys. I hope you found it valuable and learned some good intel for your sap harvest and maple syrup boil. Good luck out there, and please feel free to like, subscribe, or comment below if you have tips that you'd like to share that can help me out on my next go around. Thanks again. Bye-bye.